Our first writer says, my 3-year-old son is a bit of a nudist, although he doesn't exactly shed his clothes in public. I love the way people use the word exactly. So he sheds his clothes inexactly in public. He doesn't exactly shed his clothes in public. He has no qualms about being partly undressed in front of others. Honey, he's 3. Um, this is what 3-year-old kids do. Boys especially, but sometimes 3-year-old little girls too. Uh, I had a 3-year-old grandson who was a nudist, not, and your words, not exactly in public. He was exactly a nudist everywhere. And it was just cute as could be because he was just completely self-conscious. What is cooler than that? A kid who's unself-conscious, who feels no guilt or shame at 3. That's pretty good. You continue. It's really kind of sweet how pure and trusting of others he is, so I want to approach my concerns around it with love and no fear. So good for you that you want to do it with no fear, and the word concerns might get you in trouble. That you want to approach your concerns. That's like saying I want to approach my fears with no fears. My questions are, what would be the best response to instances of public undress? An example being when he wants to go out onto our apartment balcony naked, where he might be seen by some creep in the next building. Is this my fear taking center stage? Where's the line between basic parental caution and instilling fear? Let it go, honey. Danger. I've had a couple of friends who were cops in the department where they investigate pedophiles. Believe me, they find plenty of material at school grounds, other places where kids congregate. The most common source for pedophiles is relatives. If some creep is going to take pictures of your kid, what do you care? If he's out on your balcony naked, my friends say that they don't know of any case where, because a little kid was, like, for example, prancing out in the front yard, naked in the water sprinkler, that provoked a pedophile who, was otherwise going to be well-mannered and moral and keep the law. Is it likely he's going to be kidnapped because you let him be naked? He'll be hit by a meteor first. And as far as, sources for people being creepy, the internet's filled with that stuff. So I am absolutely convinced, 100%, that far more harm was done during those years, starting 20 plus years ago, when everybody was saying stranger danger. Far more damage was done to children, making them afraid of people, than good was ever done keeping children away from actual harm. I'm positive that. I remember as a teenager walking into malls and you'd see a cute little kid and I would just pick the kid up and put him on my shoulder and run around the mall, and people are laughing and the parents are having fun and the kid is having fun, and now I'd be in jail. I don't think they've decreased the incidence of these things at all. In fact, I think they've brought them more to public attention and, if anything, put things in people's minds that aren't already there. And we've made our children afraid. You continue. He's also not big on getting dressed, like in the morning. I was advised by one person, at least, that we look for natural consequences around him wanting to wear his pajamas all day and while out of the house. I took him for a walk in the rain today in his pajamas, and he was nothing but content. It's lovely, but how far can I let that go without getting stuck in permissive parenting? It's permissive when you let a kid get away with irresponsible or harmful behavior. But if he wears his pajamas all day, or he wants to wear them all day, who cares? If I'm not working and I don't have to be on some television show or on a conference call or whatever, I'm in my pajamas all day too. So what? The natural consequences of being in your pajamas all day is that once in a while somebody's going to go, "Ooh, there's the kid, who wears his pajamas everywhere when he's 35." He'll eventually catch on that there's an age where people expect you to change your clothes. Until then, why do you care? The first day that he goes to kindergarten and discovers that he's the only kid in school wearing pajamas, he won't be wearing pajamas the second day. And surely he won't be wearing them after his first date when he's wearing his pajamas. So sometimes the natural consequence is just letting the world deal with him in his pajamas. But these are little nothings. And if we don't fuss over them, if we leave him alone, he's in his pajamas, he's naked on the balcony, then essentially saying, yeah, do what you want, yeah, go ahead, be a natural 3-year-old, then they listen way better to us when we tell them what they can't do as they get older. So it's really kind of important to tell a kid yes a lot at this age. Here's somebody who says, here are all the things that I'm not afraid of anymore. This is somebody who used to be afraid of all these things. Spiders, aging, not being pretty enough, not being sexy enough. These are pretty big things to many people. Having too big a butt, sleeping alone, losing old friendships, my mother's emails, the disapproval of my students or clients, not understanding people's jokes, the dark, going from one place to another as I visit relatives. In other words, not being in the same place that I'm used to living. Making mistakes in English grammar. Never being famous or known by many people. My grandmother's disapproval. Not having a boyfriend. Admitting that I don't know something. Not being superficially, at least, unique. Paperwork. Talking on the phone. Not accomplishing as many things as some people think that I should. Here are some things that I've stopped wanting to do. This is somebody who's only been experiencing real love for a very short period of time. I've stopped wanting to drink alcohol. I've stopped wanting to sleep in to avoid responsibility. I've stopped wanting to do extreme exercise so that I'm as skinny as everybody thinks I'm supposed to be. I don't want to brag or show off or eat to dull my pain or fantasize about my knight in shining armor that's going to come and save me, feeding angry thoughts, feeding victim-y thoughts, inflicting physical pain on myself to test my limits, like burning myself or carving shapes into my skin with a knife, having physical intimacy with anybody if we're not genuine partners, changing my appearance to please others, obsessing over past relationships and mistakes, sympathizing with people's victimhood. I could read on and on. What's the point? Once we feel sufficiently unconditionally loved, we discover how many things in our lives there are that we do that decrease our pain and fill up our emptiness. We discover how many things we're afraid of that have no basis in the truth. And here's somebody who's learned in a matter of weeks that she's just not afraid of a whole bunch of things anymore because she feels loved. There's a whole bunch of things that she used to do that were potentially harmful or at least wasteful, and she doesn't want to do them anymore. All in a matter of weeks, and because she trusted. Everything changes once we have the perspective of seeing the world and ourselves through unconditional love. Everything. Here's somebody who asks, is it unhealthy to make your spouse the center of your world? Now, That sounds like a perfectly good thing, right? My spouse is the center of my world. It depends. Especially if you have a chainsaw, it's a very close call. But let's assume you don't have a chainsaw to make this easy. Then, yes, make her the center of your world. But again, it still depends. It's a good thing to do if you want to. If you do it out of duty, if you make your wife the center of your world because she demands it, and wow, have I seen a lot of instances of that, then that's just called being codependent and a hostage. That's not making your wife first or your spouse. And you have to recognize that there will be times where you have to share the time you have with others, even while keeping her first in your life. Just because you spend time with a friend once in a while doesn't give her the right to come along and say, oh, well, so I'm not first. So I have to be kind of clear about what it means to be the center of your world. You can't put her ahead of eternal principles like those that God teaches, or whatever you want to call God. If she decides to become a bank robber, for example, or a child abductor, you wouldn't put her first. Eternal principles really have to be first. In fact, eternal principles form the foundation of her being first in your life. Some people talk about putting God or spouse first. It's a ridiculous question. It's a specious argument. God is in everything. Marriage is, in fact, you, your spouse, and God. His love drives it all. His truths run the universe. So how can you have a marriage without him? And it's healthy to put your spouse first or the center of the universe if you don't demand anything in return. So there's not a simple yes or no to that. But if you can answer all of those things, then yeah, it can be a really very healthy thing to say. It can be a really beautiful thing to hear if you're the spouse. Here's somebody who says, today I'm attending a court for an eviction case of an elderly gentleman who has gotten behind on his rent by several months. In fact, he's behind on his rent $5,000. And his granddaughter appears to be abusing his finances. In other words, stealing his money. But he accepts this and he turns a blind eye. Well, then he's choosing to be evicted because he won't require accountability from his granddaughter. And he's doing that because he's afraid of her disapproval. He buys her with his money and it was willing to take the chance of being evicted. And now it's here. He could easily hire an accountant to see what she's doing with his money, but he won't. And his granddaughter clearly doesn't care if he's evicted. So how is any of this your problem? You didn't create it or perpetuate it or neglect it. All these other people did. It wasn't you. So you don't need to feel guilty. You continue. I'm feeling uncomfortable about this. So I'm trying to figure out what the fear is. And it's fear that I'll be heartless for wanting to evict somebody, that I'll see myself, then other people will see me as unloving. And yeah, that is your fear, but you're not heartless. The granddaughter is. The granddaughter is heartless and the grandfather is stupid to let her do it. Stupid and probably feeling unloved because he's buying her attention. And now she's standing by and letting him be evicted for money that she stole and for her lack of responsibility. And she wants you to feel responsible for it because you could just go, oh, well, it's okay. It's okay. Everybody else pays rent, but he doesn't have to because he has this really special granddaughter. I mean, that's nuts. And yet that's what she's expecting to hear. You continue, they will think badly of me because of all these things. So I've remembered I wrote a blog about how we can become an island for somebody and help lift them out of the water when they're drowning. And that if we're connected to all the love in the universe, we're connected to God and every other source of love, our island is connected to the continent of love. This lady says, so I've remembered my island and continent, and I'm feeling calmer, but I'm not sure how you decide what is loving and what is giving someone enough chances and making them accountable. How do you make this decision? Or is it mine to make? Honey, there are rules about this. If he gets X behind in his payments, he's evicted. I am positive this isn't the first notice he's gotten that he's behind in his rent. And on the blank 1st, 15th, 8th, whatever of the month, he knows he's supposed to make the payment. And he hasn't. And he hasn't made it for a very long time if he's $5,000 in arrears and has no money, unless he's, living in the penthouse suite of the Ritz, which is unlikely. You can tell all this to the old man, to the granddaughter, and the court. Make somebody accountable, or at least try to. But you are not responsible. It is not your problem. You didn't create it, and it's not your responsibility to clear it up. But victims, boy, they love to make the rest of us feel responsible. Sylvie, the other day, like days ago, had her 6th birthday. And when she got up in the morning, Bruce, her brother, who's 4, Bruce likes to play little jokes on people. And Bruce met her at her door, and he said, I'm so sorry. He says, there's no party. We've canceled your birthday party, and there are no presents. And Sylvie said, without skipping a beat, oh, that's okay. It's still my birthday. I don't know very many adults who could be that mature. And she's 6 years old. When I grow up, I want to be like Sylvie. A lady in real love was talking to me about her boyfriend. She said, I'm being very unloving and I'm pushing my boyfriend, we'll call him Bob, away with my expectations and suggestions for him to be more involved with real love, to get the love and support he needs and to learn more. I see him in pain and he's going through a tough time at the moment, and I only want to help, but it's not helping. Until recently, he had been in denial that he was even in pain and is only now seeing that he needs support, but he's still not taking the steps to get the love that he needs. Now he's also seeing my flaws and unloving behaviors, and I feel afraid that he's not going to love me. So what can I do? There are no words that heal conflict like I was wrong. So start off with that. Bob, I was wrong. I want a relationship based on love, not pain. And I've been pushing you and making you feel less loved and causing more pain instead of loving you. You need to tell him that he does not have to work on his pain. But if he is living with a lifetime of pain, how could the two of you have a healthy relationship? So you're not forcing him to do anything. These are questions you're asking him. You just want to have love as the foundation of a relationship with anybody. It doesn't have to be him. But if he doesn't want to be a participant in learning more about love, well, then why would the two of you continue? Why would the two of you continue in a relationship that's doomed not to be founded on unconditional love? But tell him that you are wrong in getting over exuberant about pushing him. But you do have to see the difference between pushing him and establishing a standard that you will have a partnership only with somebody who's willing to learn to be unconditionally loving, because it's the only thing that works. That's all. I'm going to make this a really grade school example. 2 + 2 is 4. That's an established fact. And as I work with mathematics and as I add figures, I'm going to establish that as my standard of truth. I get to do that as I work with mathematics. But I don't get to make you say that 2 + 2 is 4. See? You could say whatever you want to. But if you want to be my math partner, then you have to agree that 2 plus 2 is 4 too. Or how in the world would we ever get along? Same thing you're doing here. You're not making him meet the standard. But if he doesn't, and you continue in the relationship, you're just guaranteeing future misery in your relationship with him. Real love is the only thing that can create a lasting, happy relationship, while pain will destroy it. So what does he want to do? That's what you're asking. The fact that you're having fun together in the beginning of your relationship is just not enough. Just doesn't mean much. Never is. Billions of people have proven this. Of course, you show him what love is, but if he doesn't follow and he doesn't become interested, why bother with settling for a relationship less than you could have with somebody who is willing to meet your standard of a loving relationship? Here's somebody who says, so I've been recruited by my church to help teach the young people, 14 through 17. Oh, horrible age. Difficult because they get poisoned by hormones during this age. To teach the young people for the next 2 years. This is going to be really fun. I have a lot to learn. What's going to be interesting is what some of my churches, that's the word church is singular, some of my church, apostrophe S, churches' interpretations state that they believe that the Bible says this or that, versus what I've come to learn that real love teaches, that sometimes what my church teaches is in conflict with real love. And I've been told, obviously, that we need to teach in line with what the elders of our church teach. It's their church, so I need to respect that. So I'm asking, if a child is encouraged to pray for relief from an emotional issue, so let's say the child is sad or crying, then the elders encourage the child to pray to God to relieve their sadness. Rather than take the steps through telling the truth about themselves, feeling seen, accepted, and loved, feeling more responsibility for their own life instead of asking God to take away all of their pain. Of course, we can always pray anyway. This is still the person writing talking. But sometimes in the church, I see people pray, for example, for healing a marriage, when they could just quit being hateful and nasty and selfish with each other. So instead of doing the practical things, they pray for solutions. So how do I resolve this? I see this all the time myself, everywhere I go. People pray to God to do things for them that they need to do. And it's been my experience, God doesn't rescue us from situations that we A, create, and B, that we can solve. If we've done everything we can do, then God will add whatever power and effort he can, and those are called miracles. So what would I do in your situation, in your church? Teach the kids both things. Teach them to pour their souls out to people who can love them and help them feel God's love. And teach them what the elders teach, which is to pray to God. Teach them how to be responsible, while at the same time asking for God's grace. So you can do both and offend nobody. Another situation, the writer continues, or me and any one of the elders have a different perspective on love, and they choose to sympathize with the child about an issue rather than love and teach the child. I guess for this one, I demonstrated an example of loving and teaching, and let that be the way rather than having a discussion of what is and isn't love. That's brilliant. Yes. You simply show them what loving and teaching looks like, and they get to see the effect as opposed to having an argument. How many times have people called me and said, I need to resist the errors that other people are teaching? Why resist the errors? Why not just teach the truth? Why fight the errors? If I'm in a class that I'm teaching in church, for example, and somebody says something wrong, I don't even bother to correct them. I just teach the truth as though they hadn't spoken. Or if I'm in a group, a real love group, and a wise person just completely bungles it, I just ignore what they say and talk to the person who is the speaker and love and teach them. And people learn by example. Also, somebody said yesterday that they expect the kids to achieve and reach for growth. They expect the kids to achieve and reach for growth, but something just didn't feel good about it. So how do we encourage or expect the best from young people without them feeling the weight of these expectations? Not so hard. You teach them that there are standards of perfection to at least have in their minds, to work toward. Here is what perfect loving looks like, for example. Now we spend all of our lives working toward it. There's no need to feel bad when we're not perfect. We just get back up, and you give them examples of what getting back up looks like. Where, for example, you knew that you were supposed to be loving, but you were unkind to somebody, you fell down, and how you got back up and learned to be loving. So we're constantly moving toward this eventual goal of perfection without expecting kids to reach it right now, which is absurd because we adults haven't reached it, so how can we expect kids to? There are, however, some standards that we can keep perfectly now. You can perfectly not gossip now. You can perfectly eliminate anger from your life right now. You can perfectly quit using crystal meth. You can perfectly not watch porn. So there are things that we can do, some things that we can do more easily perfectly now, and some things that will take the rest of our lives, like learning to love people. This is from a woman who has had serious unhappiness in her life. Horrible marriage, now over. It affected her and her daughter severely. She said, my daughter called me just before midnight to tell me all about her finals and all the cool things that she learned this quarter. She's thriving with her literature classes, her biology classes. I feel so grateful that she wants to share this with me, and it's all because of what I learned in real love. You're very fortunate, kid. You're very fortunate to have learned it. You're very fortunate to have had the faith and trust to believe in it, and to have had the persistence to teach it to your daughter. You were diligent and loving. You were not lucky. You worked at it. You didn't quit. And it took a lot of steps to get to this place. For the rest of you, I can remember having conversations with this woman when she would just cry that she damaged her daughter so much that her daughter would never be normal again and would never be happy. And I said, just keep going. And she'd fall down and make mistakes and fail, get up and keep going. And someday, I said, you'll have some spectacular experience with her, and then you'll remember that it was all of these little, apparently unimportant steps that you took that led you to this miracle. And here we are. So good for you. Here's somebody who says, I have been lucky over and over throughout my life, the times that I've acted in irresponsible, illegal ways. In most cases, I've paid little to no price for my behavior. Or so you think. You continue. Last year, when I stole food from a grocery store and was finally caught, I wasn't arrested, just given a stern warning by security. As a teenager, when I got caught speeding, I wasn't given a ticket again, just a warning as the officer shook his head and said, I can't believe I'm doing this. At 15, I broke into the community college's chemistry lab to steal some chemicals. Nobody found out. Nothing happened. At 19, I lied to a general practitioner in New York City to get drugs for an overdose, and I got nothing more than a wary glance from him as he handed me the prescription. A year ago, when I was homeless, I sneaked or I snuck into an empty building to stay overnight. And in the morning, the police came. But again, I wasn't arrested, just given a warning and a restriction from ever visiting that place again. The list goes on and on. But you said, I've been lucky that I've gotten away with these things. We don't really get away with them. Each time we break the law, and I don't mean the law of the land, each time we break law, eternal laws, the laws of the land, it gets easier and easier to justify doing it the next time. Well, nothing really bad happened, so it won't be any big deal the next time. It gets easier and easier to lie and to steal and to get the excitement of imitation love. You continue, the message I took from all this is that I can do whatever I want and have there be no real price for my choices. There is a sick thrill and a feeling of power I get from doing it, and a lot of people do. I feel like I escaped gravity. That's a great way to put it. I'm invincible, almost as if I possess some magical power to obtain whatever it is I want at no cost, when everybody else has to pay. But then empty again and searching for more. I know a woman who has plenty of money in the world, and yet she shoplifts. Why? For exactly this reason. There's a sick thrill and a feeling of power from getting away with things, from defying, as it were, gravity. She continues. The thing is, I have experienced consequences of gravity enough times to know that this magical world doesn't really exist. The second time that I exceeded the speed limit, I did get a ticket and had to go to court. Not fun for somebody who's severely socially phobic. One warehouse job did fire me after watching a security video of me eating somebody else's lunch. Not a fun phone call to get. While the price could have been much higher for these things, even with no price, it still weighs down on me heavily. The guilt over my choice and the fear of discovery. It's not just guilt. It's a lack of confidence in your ability to make good choices. If you make enough bad choices in a row, you begin to doubt your ability to make good ones. And only natural that you would, because bad choices become a habit. So why do I simply not choose to do the right thing, she says. You've answered this question for me so many times. I know I'm still getting something out of it. That's why I keep making these choices. If I were to live by the rules of society, I would have to conform to standards I hate. I'd have to accept being told what to do without resistance. I'd have to relinquish all forms of comfort. Lastly, I'd have to grow up. This lady is still rebelling against being told what to do by angry and controlling parents. That's what she's really doing. And as scary as it has felt the past few days to start to grow up, to move and to feel alive and strong for most of the day, not just a little bit of it, it is so much better than living half dead, underwater. That state of being has to become my new default. You're right, it's life or death. I decided that I can't afford to break the laws of happiness. The price is too high. I decided that. I don't do it because God says not to. I don't do it because the real love books say not to. I don't do it because I'll get caught. I can't afford to break these laws. The price to me is too high. She concludes actually. If I choose to do the right thing in all areas of my life, no matter what, I would be free. I believe this to be true. I may have to deal with inconveniences like financial strain if I paid past owed money, but that's nothing compared to the lifelong strain. Listen carefully to somebody who knows, because she's telling you what she's learned from being irresponsible. I may have to deal with inconveniences like financial strain from paying past money that I owe, but it's nothing compared to the lifelong strain on my peace and identity when I lie and cheat and steal. It's well said. the strain on my peace and identity, and confidence for that matter. I don't want to live like a child anymore. I want to grow up and live the responsible path. So, she voiced some things very well. And yet, just days ago, she was fired for doing the very things that she just talked about above. Not being responsible, stealing, lying, being dishonest. Hopefully, this will be just another step closer to her really finally learning this. For some of us, it just takes what it takes. People ask me all the time, what turned your life around? And I said, oh, pain. I finally had to be in enough pain to be willing to change my life. And she's just not to the place where she's in enough pain yet. Here's a lady who says, I'm blabbing, but I've got one more thing I want to share about. Today it's been a month and 2 days since I've been on Facebook. My husband has my password and I have his. And I'd like to tell you about what I've learned. I've learned that I can live without Facebook. I think that's just amazing. Apparently that's true because I still don't know how to use Facebook and I'm still alive. Actually, I'm happier, she says, without it. I'm more present in my own life. I can't begin to tell you how many husbands and kids, it's not always the mother in the family, but more often than not. So I'm going to just make the generalization and you can send me emails about it later. But how many husbands and children say, our wife and mother's never around. She's never here. No matter what event we're doing, she's on Facebook or some form of social media and chatting with her friends and putting up pictures. And she's so busy creating an image of herself that she's not actually present in real life. This lady says, I'm more present in my life. There are fewer distracting thoughts that pop into my head just because I know less about what's going on in other people's lives. You're brave. And I'm not surprised by any of this. Facebook is electronic, incredibly efficient and addictive. Gossip, bragging, comparing, and rarely connecting. I can't count how many people looked me in the eye and said, you know, Facebook's been good for me because it helps me stay connected to my family. Yeah, and they actually use it for that purpose 0.05% of the day. She says, I'm just less in other people's business and more in my own. I have more time and I feel more in control of my time. I also become more aware of feeling disconnected from people because I don't have something to go to scroll down and block the pain out. I went on Facebook again today. I hadn't even realized that my 1 month fast was over until today. So that's why I've been off for a month and 2 days. And it's funny, even after a month of not using it, I went straight back to my old patterns after I logged back on. In other words, I became an addict again. I behaved like an addict. Even though I've been off for a month and 2 days, I became an addict immediately again. It's absolute proof that Facebook is an addiction. I can tell you, I quit drugs many, many times. And no matter how long I was off drugs, if I started back on them, I went right to the sewer, the bottom of my addictive behavior in less than 24 hours. Took no time at all because the slope was well greased. I found myself judging people, comparing myself to people again, maybe subtle stuff, not really, but still there. So this is what I've decided to do. I'll keep my Facebook account, but I'll have to ask my husband every time I want to use it, maybe once a week or something. Let's see how you do. I like it that way. I can't manage it myself. Oh, bless your heart. This is the hallmark of an addiction. It interferes with your family. It interferes with your own happiness. And you can't easily stop it yourself. That's an addiction. It's that easy. You say it yourself, I can't manage it. I've tried it 1,000 times. So overall, I'm glad I did this. I'm happy to stay off it, and I'm happy to be living a more real life. We need connection. We need to feel loved. And Facebook ain't that. Here's somebody who says, why would someone, either a mother to an adult daughter or a husband to his wife, and he must have a specific person in mind, but he's trying to make it sound obscure so I don't figure out who it is. Why would a mother to an adult daughter or a husband to his wife say, we as in human beings, we don't deserve to be happy? I'm baffled. Is it a controlling behavior? Easy. Picture that you've never been happy yourself. All you know is anger, loneliness, misery. Then you're having a difficult conversation with a child or a husband, and they're asking you difficult questions about life, or they're actually blaming you for their misery. What are your choices? There are really only two obvious ones that pop to my mind. You could offer a reasonable explanation about life. You could talk about unconditional love, the real cause of pain, how we respond to it, your own responsibility for their unhappiness. That's your first choice. Not likely. Or you just say, oh, well, the kind of happiness you're talking about just isn't really feasible. Easy, that one, because there's no responsibility. Uncounted times when I've done seminars, people have said, usually somebody in the back raised their hand and said, I'm just not sure that this kind of unconditional love that you're talking about, I'm just not sure that it's possible in today's world. What are they saying? They're saying, I've never seen it, and I'm the most brilliant person in the world, so it couldn't exist. Or I've never seen it, and if I were to try to find it, that would require some work and responsibility on my part. So it'd be much easier just to say, no, that's ridiculous. It doesn't exist. And that's what we do. Here's somebody who says, what do I say to my son when he says that he stays with me? This is her teenage son. Only because, follow this, he hates me a little less than he hates his father. Isn't that flattering? The child was raised without real love until the last few months. The child is, I can't remember the age, 15, 16 years old. Spoiled, entitled, angry, snotty kid. I've met the kid and wow, he just oozes it. He defines love, and it's understandable because all of his friends do. He defines love as getting what he wants. So if you give him what he wants, then you care about him and you're his friend. If you don't give him what he wants, then you are Satan and you are not his friend. Pretty easy way to get through life, don't you think? And he manipulates everyone for what he wants. He's privileged. He goes to private schools. He has his own car. He has everything a child could possibly want. And yet, what does he say to his mother by way of gratitude? I'm staying with you because his mother and father are divorced. I'm staying with you only because I hate you a little less than I hate my father. In other words, you both aren't my slaves sufficiently to qualify as good parents, but I'll stay with the one who's less irritating. So what do you say to a kid like that? You say, I am pouring my heart and soul. Now listen to these words. This is what I'm suggesting you actually say to this spoiled, entitled kid who I know. I am pouring my heart and soul into doing everything I can to be a good mother. I will make mistakes, to be sure, but who doesn't? I work really hard to make a living for you. I dedicate myself to learning how to love you. You, on the other hand, do absolutely nothing responsible, and you only complain, which is a remarkably easy job. And your reaction is that you simply hate me a little less than your father. Regrettably, this says a great deal more about you than it does about me. Remember, we're talking to a 16-year-old who thinks he knows everything, so he understands every word of this. I hope that you learn to be more grateful and happy, because if you continue on this path of hating everybody who doesn't give you exactly what you want, you will be miserable all of your life. And much sooner than you think, I won't give you the choice of living with me, the one you hate slightly less than your father. I will tell you that you have to live with your father. Apparently she did tell him that, exactly. And last I heard, he was being fairly cooperative, and it's been a couple of weeks. Entitlement is becoming a rampant disease, a virus. And if parents don't have the courage to do something about it, they're going to be doomed. I've been visiting a guy in prison for the last several weeks, and he's suffering the results of feeling entitled all of his life. You can either teach your child entitlement now, or you can let the warden and fellow prisoners teach your child entitlement when he gets to be old enough to go to prison. Let me tell you, they don't care nearly as much about you in prison. This is from a woman who's been practicing for a year or more, practicing real love. She said, when I was in group, I brought up something that I did with my son as a consequence for his screaming or refusing to do something he was told. After group, another member of the group, a guy, asked me if that wasn't maybe kind of harsh of me to do with my son. The best time to talk about something that's said in group is in group. That's what group's for. By telling you one-on-one, he was being more intimidating, and he avoided the feedback of others in the group, so he was trying to be right and get away with it. It would have been far better had he talked to you about it in the group. It's too late for that now. I'm just telling you that for the future. If somebody comes up to you after a group and says, I think that's a little harsh, you say, then I'll tell you what, you bring that up first thing next group. She continues, and I knew myself that there was nothing wrong with what I had done with my son. In fact, it benefits both me and him. What I enjoyed, though, was that I didn't mind his question because I felt confident about what I'd done and could explain it to him. Actually, the real reason you didn't mind was because you felt confident in yourself. Bless your heart. About time, and I'm glad for you. This woman says, I have a 28-year-old son living at home who punches holes in the walls of his bedroom when he's awakened in the morning. He has no walls left in his room. He's been working since he was about 17, and he only comes home to sleep. And he's helped me pay for the mortgage after I lost my job. So reasonable that you would allow him to stay in your house if he's helping you pay the mortgage, if he wants a place to stay. That part is reasonable. He resents his younger siblings for having it easier than he did. I have a punching bag for him to use instead of walls, but he prefers the walls. Now he's punching the bathroom walls. Probably because he has no more walls to punch in his bedroom, which must be an interesting looking bedroom. I feel sorry for him, and if I say anything, I know he will say that it's everybody else's fault for waking him up. I know he's behaving like a victim, but I have to be careful and sensitive and sure that I say the right thing. Oh, honey, you're so dead. So you're raising a kid who feels entitled and is simply older than the 15 or 16-year-old that we were talking about earlier. You say you have to be careful and sensitive. What you're really saying is that you're afraid of your son. I have to be careful and sensitive. You're walking on eggshells. You're afraid of the kid. And he knows it, which is why he keeps punching walls. You have to tell him straight out, today, that if he punches any more walls, or if he even erupts in rage without punching walls, he has to move. He has to move right then, as in that second. He can throw his stuff in a bag and he can leave in the car, or you'll call the police. He cannot live in the same house as you if he keeps punching things. He's destroying property, that's one thing, but just as bad is the tension that is hurting your other 5 kids. They have to live in perpetual fear of what this guy's going to do. If he's punching walls, what sensible kid isn't wondering if they're going to be punched next? And that's not unlikely. And if he's 20-something years old and he punches one of his younger brothers or sisters, it ain't that hard to kill a young kid. His anger's hurting them. And you're not saying anything makes you a joke to the kids. It invalidates the worth of your love. It makes you not a reliable source. So it, in effect, in the world, makes them alone. It's always about love. It's not about holes in the wall. Your son needs to find a source of unconditional love. Doesn't sound like you're the person to do that, but you can recommend somebody to him. If he doesn't listen, then he needs to move out. Then he needs to learn to trust that source of love and remember it, and eventually learn to share it with the people around him. And then instead of punching holes in walls, he'll find that he's a happy, responsible human being. And that's how it works for all of us. We'll see you next week.